The sophisticated civilian institutions that the Ottomans had developed over centuries, tax collection systems, administrators, a complex and fair legal system, were also failing. The empire's growth had been fueled by conquest and the taxes that new territories generated. Without growth and new revenues, corruption set in. Provincial officials began selling judgeships. Merit promotion gave way to bribery and nepotism. The infrastructure collapsed. The Ottomans also failed to develop a modern economy to replace their shrinking tax base. And they faced new competition. Over time, European powers developed new sea trade routes that cut the Ottomans out of the lucrative Asian silk and spice trades. The once glorious Ottoman Empire was becoming known as the sick man of Europe. Mahmud II's successor, Sultan Abdul Mejid, looked to the West for help in bolstering the fortunes and the image of the empire. He was influenced by the British aristocratic class and mimicked European styles in his dress and in his surroundings.
He looks very elegant. He has a half cape and some gold buttons. He doesn't wear a kaftan, as previous sultans had of the classical age.
In 1843, anxious for a symbol of success, he abandoned Topkapi Palace. As the economy and governmental systems were failing, the Sultan commissioned a new and more European-style residence. The magnificent Dolmabahce Palace took 13 years to complete. The 11-acre building featured 285 rooms, 46 ballrooms, 6 Turkish baths, and 68 toilets.
Bu bölüm sarayın kristal merdivenler adı verilen bölümüdür.
This part of the palace is called the Crystal Staircase. It was designed to impress visitors when they first entered Dolmabahce. In addition to the crystal balustrades, the ceiling itself is also built of crystal, so that the light that streams through forms a magnificent display of the 7 colors of the rainbow.
The ceremonial throne room was one of the largest ballrooms in Europe, designed to host state affairs for 2,500 people. The 4.5-ton chandelier was a gift from Britain's Queen Victoria.
Bu saray, Osmanlı Devleti'nin inşa ettiği ikinci büyük saraydır, Topkapı Sarayı'ndan sonra.
This palace was built to show the glamour and the wealth of the Ottomans to foreign diplomats. But the palace came at a great cost. The Ottomans had wars and economic crises, and spending billions of gold lira and tons of gold on the construction of Dolmabahce only made the financial situation worse.
Bu bölgedeki devlet adamlarına ait
The Ottomans have declared bankruptcy in 1876, and the Ottoman debt burden is crushing, and in fact, more Europeans work for the Ottoman debt administration in the empire than do Ottoman officials work for the Ottoman Ministry of Finance.
The reign of Sultan Abdul Hamid II would lead the Ottoman Empire into the 20th century. He continued to try to rebuild the reputation of the crumbling empire. He commissioned the most prominent photographers of the day to document the best of the empire: schools, hospitals, and manufacturing. The Sultan personally presented over 1,000 photographs to the U.S. Library of Congress and the British Museum, hoping to convince the Western world of the Ottoman Empire's technological development and industrial advances. These pictures do not, however, tell the true story. As World War I approached, the Ottomans faced bankruptcy and economic disaster. As the 20th century began, the Ottoman Empire was falling apart, stumbling from economic to political crisis.
It was quite difficult and problematic for Ottomans because we see the emergence of nationalism and nationalistic ideologies during this period, especially in the Balkans first. Many of these peoples wanted to develop their own separate nationalistic identities.
And some were successful in gaining independence from the Ottoman Empire. But this was not the case for the Christian Armenian minority, who had lived in the region for 3,000 years. By early in the First World War, 1915, at a time when the Ottoman Empire was shrinking and besieged from all sides, the ultra-nationalist group in power, known as the Young Turks, was trying to restore the glory of their declining empire by uniting all Turkish-speaking peoples in the empire and beyond. The Armenians came under siege when, in the spring of 1915, the Young Turks ordered a forced deportation of 1.75 million ethnic Armenians out of Anatolia to Syria and Mesopotamia. The story of why and what happened is, nearly a century later, controversial, emotional, and hotly debated. To the Turks, the deportations were ordered because some Armenians were allying themselves with Russia, Turkey's enemy to the east. To the Armenians, this was a pretext. The deportations were ordered out of a desire to rid Turkey of Armenians forever. During the evacuation, a forced march of hundreds of miles, hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children died of starvation and massacre. Newspaper reports of the time tell of horrific scenes of rape and murder. Henry Morgenthau, the American ambassador to Turkey, later wrote, "I am confident that the whole history of the human race contains no such horrible episode as this." Estimates of total Armenian deaths in the period of the evacuations range from 300,000 to 1.5 million. The Turks acknowledged that hundreds of thousands of Armenians died, but they and some historians maintained that these deaths were the result of war-caused starvation, civil unrest, and ethnic conflict. To Armenians and many historians, the actions were a clear act of genocide committed by the Ottomans, and today have been recognized as such by many countries. As the Ottoman Empire continued to fail, a power vacuum developed that the British and the French were only too happy to exploit. Both nations were establishing their own spheres of influence in the region, competing with each other and challenging the Ottoman Empire for control of the Middle East.